Ha 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 ha. Yeah, oh. Yeah, oh. Cuba, 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 Cuba. Cuba, 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 Cuba. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, oh. Yeah, oh. The first time I really remember thinking about music was when I was going to Olympia High School. We were so lucky back then. We had live dances every weekend. At that time, the Northwest music scene was kind of in their second generation of R&B bands. But we got to see the Sonics there. The Wailers played, Merrily and the Turnabouts, the Bumps, the Counts, all these great bands. And they'd always play what I would call blues songs, but back then they were R&B songs. So you get your mixture of Louie Louie with the Turn On Song and Midnight Hour and just kind of all this mishmash of souls and blues, and I just loved it. I went to California to an engineering school outside of Los Angeles in Claremont, California. And I took down my Paul Revere and Sonics and Wailers posters. And my roommate in my freshman year, he had Country Joe and the Grateful Dead and Moby Grape, the first LPs of the San Francisco wave. And I had heard none of these bands. It was like, what's all this shit? And within a month or two, because I started smoking pot right away, with a month or two, it was like, dumped all my Northwest blues albums and was getting into all this great psychedelic stuff coming out of San Francisco. But one of the guys my age was a Jefferson Airplane nut, and he couldn't get enough of it. So he goes, I need to make a live concert recording. All the crown of creation. He had rented a Uher, which is U-H-E-R, reel-to-reel. It was a mono, and it used 5-inch reels, which means he had to constantly be changing them. And he went out and he rented a microphone, one mic, and this Uher reel-to-reel, and he recorded the airplane in these little venues around where we went to school in Southern California. And then he would bring the tapes back, transfer them to a 10-inch reel, and play them at lunchtime in the cafeteria. Anyway, I lasted a couple of years at this school, and I was barely hanging on by my fingernails, and so I came up here to transfer to the UW. And so it's like, shit, but I don't have my live airplane tapes. So I got in contact with Harvey, and he made reel-to-reel copies off his reel. And that's how how I started getting into live recordings, getting these live recordings from the mail from Southern California. And Harvey, by this time, they'd moved on from their mono, and they'd found a stereo Sony reel-to-reel. And so they recorded a band called the Grateful Dead with these stereo reel-to-reel audience recordings. These guys made the best audience tapes ever. And I just loved these. It was like, fuck the airplane. I mean, this stuff is even better. Just sounded so good. And that's so simple, but I've always felt it's true. It just sounded good. We need to capture this, and we need to capture it
in the best fidelity we can. If you go back through the cultures of taping, you'll find Dylan, there's Dylan tapers. They were never driven by the technology. Bruce Springsteen tapers, never driven. Just for some reason, these high-tech tapers were not attracted to other bands other than the Grateful Dead. I cannot explain that, but it's true. Have you ever run across something called TQM? Total Quality Management. It's a Japanese philosophy that this guy imported over to Japan and then brought it back. But it's a way of diagramming what you're doing and then constant improvement. Test, change it, see if it sounds better. If it doesn't, go back. I didn't know that phrase at the time, but when I finally took the classes, it was like, that's what we do in tape culture. We always want to get better. And I can't tell you why, we just did. I can remember friends saying, why do you do this? And I'd say, the music demands it. The Grateful Dead are playing better. I just felt I was in the midst of genius, and this had to be captured so I could show it to somebody else.